Hello and a very warm welcome to the Internet of Things Made Simple. I'm Larry by Humor. This is our 11th episode in our COVID series, and I thank you very much for joining us. Big shout out to any first-time listeners. What took you so long? But anyways, glad you're here. If you're new to our show, I can only assume you're here to learn a bit more about a technology, IoT, that is changing all aspects of our lives. It is changing how we live, work, and play. If that is you, a great place to learn more about it is our webpage, the Internet of Things Madesimple.com. In addition to previous podcast links, there's a couple dozen there, or a few dozen there anyways. There are some blogs and free, very colorful ebooks to look at. As I'm recording this, we have just completed the U.S. Memorial Day long weekend, and we're seeing more things come back to normal. However, many of us are either not working, or like me, working from home, making the roads a lot less crowded than they used to be. While venturing out one of the few times that I have, I noticed there was a number of construction vehicles up ahead on the major artery that I was on. It seems they had shut down 2 out of the 3 lanes in each direction to do some maintenance work in the middle of the day on a weekday. Normally this would have made for a legendary traffic story to tell your friends, but with the shutdown, we barely even noticed. Traffic sailed right through. This made me very happy. The city was using this time to pave the roads when it would least affect us. They were taking advantage of the shutdown. This was great. So for this episode, we're going to look at some other projects that governments, it could be federal, municipal, or regional, depending on where you are, can do during this slowdown. We will include ways that can improve service for the residents, lower operation and maintenance costs, and increase safety for all of us. We start by getting a little wet. Like most kids, my boys love to swim. However, all community pools, arenas, and gyms are still closed locally. However, one would hope they would use this time wisely to improve their operations and lower costs going forward. Sensor-based solutions can improve their operations, lower energy use and greenhouse gases, and improve the overall security to keep people safe. This includes things like automated pool systems that control chlorine and heat, automated floodlighting systems that can prevent those expensive, energy-sucking big floodlights from being on when no one is there to enjoy them. It could also be automated sprinkler systems in fields and on municipally owned golf courses to prevent watering from occurring when it is raining, which happens way too often sometimes. Finally, many staff have to work late at night, often after dark in these areas. Smart parking lot lighting systems can ensure that while they're walking out to their cars, it is done in a very well-lit environment, and then the lights go off after they leave. When we come back, we'll talk about how to improve a major issue in most cities. In my book, called The Internet of Things Made Simple, I joked about how getting a great parking spot in most downtown areas was just below the birth of children and how much joy it gave to people. I think people living in cities can relate to that. At a time when you can take out 90% of downtown parking meters and spots in most areas and no one would even notice, it makes sense for cities to look at how to upgrade their parking systems now. This would not only improve traffic flow and downtown urban business, but is a great way to get people back. This improves revenue now and in the future. Most new systems use different IoT technologies to improve the parking experience. Some use overhead sensors to let you know if a spot is available before you venture down that long aisle. These have been used in shopping malls for a while. However, more advanced systems go much further than that. They can tell you where to park while you are still driving. You first start out by punching in where you're going at the start of your journey. Using the GPS on your phone, the system knows when you are getting close, and it can direct you towards a very close parking spot. It can even turn that overhead marker to occupied, as it is now reserved for your car, and it can automatically bill your credit card. It can go even beyond that. If you need extra time, you can just go onto the app and you can tell it, I need more time. It doesn't have to be a city-owned lot either. Some large parking companies have started to install these themselves. Great time to do it now when the lots are not that full. In terms of traffic, as I mentioned, traffic is definitely no longer an issue in most spots, but we all know it will be again, and I guess we kind of hope it will be again in the near future. Cities have started to look at installing sensor-based solutions to detect issues with the road before the pandemic, but this often meant creating traffic jams. Not an issue now. This allows the city to better warn people via overhead signs of traffic issues. It could be an environmental issue, it could be an accident, whatever it might be, and it will better direct you towards less congested roads. Think of it like Waze, or Waz, I can never figure out how to pronounce that, except for it's for everyone. When we come back, we'll talk about a part of a city's infrastructure that most forget until there's an incident. Okay, politicians love to spend money, and we all know that, but they especially love to spend money on things that do two things for them. One, gets them votes now, and two, leaves a legacy for themselves in the future. They love airports, big fancy bridges, schools, new highways. However, I'm not sure if fixing sewer pipes carries that same kind of level of sexiness. Most of us don't think of building infrastructure maintenance as sexy. Everyone loves a new bridge, but no one loves maintaining a 70-year-old one. Scarily, though, we have a lot of really old pieces of city infrastructure out there. It would shock most people to know how many sewer pipes, water mains, and bridges are now in operation well past their intended lifespan, often decades past their intended lifespan. Unfortunately, we can't afford to just replace them all tomorrow, especially if there's not a lot of political will to do so. What we can do instead is better look after them to prioritize work that needs to be done. Cities are using a variety of IoT-based sensors to do this. It could be moisture sensors to see which water mains are leaking or are most prone to creating those big sinkholes. It might be monitoring the load on a particular highway to see if it needs to be upgraded. It might be using harmonic or sound sensors to detect if a bridge is showing signs of wear that could necessitate a major overhaul. It simply listens to the bridge and it knows when it's making sounds that it shouldn't. This stuff is far from cool, but it keeps things working and it offers a tremendous return on investment for cities. When we come back, we'll talk about improving the method of getting around that's used by tens of millions of people every day in North America. The last area we're going to cover today is a way for a city to get several returns on investment at the same time, and that is to improve the public transit system. As I'm recording this, most transit operators have seen the number of riders plummet, and we've also seen the number of bikes that's being bought in most cities rise dramatically. It is funny, though, how each week we've seen a new rise in something. First it was women's hair coloring products, then it was men's hair clippers, and now it's bikes. This means that the level of ridership that most transit systems saw pre-pandemic may not bounce back as fast as the economy. People may have found other ways. Cities need to do a few things to convince people that it is both a good value and service to ride the bus and that it's safe. Now is the time to make changes to do this, while you can easily take buses and trains out of service. The first thing they can do is to keep people safe while using transit, which may get them back in the first place now. This may be solutions including things like automated passenger counters to make sure the buses and trains aren't overloaded, video services that can detect a lack of physical distancing, and temperature-oriented solutions to alert to a possibly ill patient. Beyond that, though, you need to offer a better level of service to both entice people and to increase revenues for struggling local governments. Onboard Wi-Fi service may be a way to do that, especially if they tied it into the purchase of monthly passes. From a service standpoint, improve next bus or next train notifications, like sending a text to your smartphone, improves service and value to your customers. From a revenue standpoint, GPS-based advertising makes a ton of sense. It can be both internal on the bus for the passengers and on the outside, and more specifically, targeted natures of the ads based on proximity or hotly desired. So for instance, if you're coming up to a local McDonald's, you can change the ad to push McDonald's. When we come back, we'll talk about why municipalities should do this now, even in a time of declining revenue, and we'll wrap this up. So I can hear municipal managers and leaders now. This sounds wonderful, but we barely have money to keep the lights on. However, that is kind of short-sighted. I think we're all hoping cities are here for the long term. You have to make investments at some point. Does it not make sense to do investments when things are quiet? There are also many state, provincial, depending on where you are, or federal programs for cities. And at a time of low interest rates, borrowing now makes sense when you're talking about projects that have both long lives to them and tremendous returns on investment. Plus, when are you ever going to have a time when there's plenty of workers available, like electricians and other installers, and your assets are seeing their lowest usage ever? You'll probably want to do this stuff down the road, but it's only going to cost you much more and involve major disruptions to services when you inevitably put these in. I hope cities are thinking about this when they make their planning. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. We've been focusing a lot during the pandemic on ways that IoT can make things better, including our surprise runaway hit episode from last week, how IoT can help to ensure that our kids are safe and productive in school when they go back in September, whether they actually go back in person or they stay virtual. You may want to listen to that one. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to hearing from you, whether you just want to say hi or if you have an idea for a show. The best place to start is our Facebook page, The Internet of Things Made Simple. If I'm connected to you on LinkedIn, drop me a note through that way. Or if I'm connected to you via old-fashioned ways like email or text, send me one of those. I don't get many of those nowadays. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks. Take care. I'm Larry by Humor.